Namaste from Sweden. I'm Rohan Mathew, and I have the honor today of sharing some of my thoughts, ideas, and learned knowledge with you all. I'm currently working with the Swedish government to go fully climate neutral by 2030 and then become climate positive shortly after. I moved to Sweden just 4 years ago after running my own consulting company in India based on regenerative design, which I must add is not yet a discipline on its own. So after getting a foundation in the field with permaculture from Permaculture College Australia, I enrolled in a lot of other courses, including Earthen Architecture from Oroville and online courses ranging from Harvard to Tokyo University in a wide spectrum of related courses. But since permaculture is basically a collection of ancient and modern techniques, distillation of which has led to permaculture principles, ethics, and guidelines, I had a good base to start off with, and then later be able to decide which subjects I want to go deeper into. In little over a decade, I have researched on these topics mentioned here on the page. Do not worry if these are new to you. I just shared them here so you can research about them individually, as each of them is a deep rabbit hole. But they are pointing towards the same goal, which is how we can humans thrive on the planet and do that along with other organisms. I can hear some of you thinking, could you please break it down in simpler words? Yes, of course, I can. Thank you for asking. Well, in essence, we are trying to do everything inspired by how nature is designed to work. And in the scientific field, this is called biomimicry, as you can see written there. And since we are not just limited to copying one single action, but in fact many actions within the process, by replicating the systems thinking behind a set of relationships and actions, we are evoking the system thinking field of study written vastly about by Fritjof Capra. Then comes deep ecology, which is just a notion of putting humans in the middle of the ecosystem equation and not on the top of the ecosystem chain, which is to say living by being cooperative rather than oppressive. And then the rest I would leave unto you to grab a screenshot of maybe and research later. So let's dive into today's topic. As we all know, there is so much bad news about our planet, from floods to wildfires to fire tornadoes. Many have just given up, understandably. But what if there was another path of not only saving the planet, but for saving us? Since the planet can adapt to extreme conditions and even life will adapt to new conditions after some time, but our human physiology would not allow us to survive these extreme conditions. So therefore, we are not really even being that altruistic or philanthropic by trying to avoid climate change. We are, in essence, just trying to save ourselves. The biggest tipping point we have already crossed in the planetary systems is carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere. A tipping point simply means going past the point of no return. Another big one we are about to cross is the amount of sun reflected back by the ice on the planet, which keeps the climate system in check. We need these two huge permanent ice caps on the polar ends and glaciers around the world to keep our climate system in what the scientists call the Holocene period. Here you can see the civilization could only start in the Holocene period, with the temperature and climate stability before that period was highly erratic and extreme changes were evident, as you can see on the graph. So the stability in temperature and climate is what the Holocene period suggests. Once the tipping point is crossed, then we would not be able to maintain this Holocene perfection that Earth took millions of years to create. As you can see here, even agriculture started after the Holocene period. And as you know, we could not start any civilization before agriculture. Another tipping point would be the change in land use systems around the world. Since agriculture has taken a very bad turn since the industrial era and is now the leading cause of desertification around the world. With around 2/3 of the world almost desertified, we are the first species on the planet to negatively affect the climate single-handedly. Once enough ice melts, we cannot cool the planet back down to get the ice cover required to reflect the appropriate amount of sunlight back into space. And hence, it will only get warmer and warmer due to more and more sun being absorbed by the entire planet, with no ice caps and more desertification. Here we can see what is called the Great Acceleration. Sticking to my short time frame, I would just like to comment here on the fact that 1,000 gigatons is the amount of carbon dioxide we have released in the atmosphere since 1750 when the Industrial Revolution began. 1 billion tons is 1 gigaton. And this incomprehensible amount to the human mind is what we call our legacy load. So even if we all get electric cars tomorrow and the governments shift to fully renewable resources of energy, we will still have this legacy load that we release in the atmosphere left, which will keep affecting us for centuries. Unless, of course, we draw down the carbon dioxide in some way which doesn't cost us the earth back into the earth, soil, plants, wherever we can think of, and which I will come to now soon. Best way to do that is regenerative agriculture. Scientists have been mapping and modeling hundreds of solutions, and nothing comes as close in scale and effectiveness as regenerative agriculture. There are many other tipping points, as you can Google planetary boundaries and get more insights in the field. It is led by the Swedish researcher Johan Rockström, and here you can see an overview of his findings, which was from his paper in 2009. But you can see on a pre-industrial level how we were quite safe in these 9 boundaries. Then in 1950 already we had crossed 1 boundary, and we've just been crossing boundaries ever since. Nothing to be proud about here. 1 billion people would be climate refugees due to soil desertification. And the UN has reported that within 60 years, the top soil of the whole world would be gone if we continue in the path. Agriculture can be seen as one of the activities that affects most of these planetary boundaries single-handedly. Even agriculture students don't even view soil as a healthy living ecosystem. This is why it is easy for them to be applying dangerous chemicals that flow in excess into our water systems and thus into the entire ecosystem, eventually into all our bodies and our kids. These dangerous chemicals originated from the German scientist named Fritz Haber. He invented a process to make the first synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. He also is the one to make the first chemical bombs which was used in wars, and the toxic gas used in Holocaust. You can research him. His name is Fritz, as in Fritz, Haber, Haber. And eventually the company Dow, DOW, then spread these chemicals as pesticides around the world. There are over 200 peer-reviewed scientific studies that correlate the spraying of these toxic chemicals to ADD in children, pediatric cancers, and birth defects. Chronic stress to the soils through constantly spraying it with herbicide, fungicide, pesticide, and tilling is destroying our richest resource in the process, which we call desertification. Well, here we come to data that I think everybody already knows, hopefully. But so I will move on and add things like everything runs by carbon. We humans are made of 16% carbon. Carbon is the driving engine of ecosystems. Soil microbes run by carbon. So why is carbon turned into an enemy now? Well, let's just turn back a little bit and see. Plants turn, for example, 60% of the carbon dioxide they breathe to carbon fuel and create their biomass. The rest of the 40% of the carbon absorbed is sent to the roots to feed microbes in the soil. In return, the microbes bring in nutrients from deeper in the soil to feed the plant roots. The microbes turn the carbon into a sort of carbon glue, which they use to live safely inside of, until we come and plow, till, and crush, and even sun dry and roast it by leaving the soil bare. This not only destroys the microbial habitats, and other networks like mycelium and what have you, but also changes the airflow and the water flow inside the soil. So, in short, the microbes thrive in mostly undisturbed soil. And just like in our body, we need the microbes to survive. This heavy industrial acceleration to release carbon dioxide in the air by most essential life sustaining industry, agriculture, is proven by satellite imaging, which shows the release of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere when the farmers till the crops. Have you ever thought that by just actually avoiding something or doing less, we can actually be much better off? Yeah, this is one of those cases. Moving on, the health of nature and ecology is tied to the soil. Healthy soils lead to healthy planets and eventually the whole ecosystem, which leads to healthy animals, which leads to healthy humans. It leads to healthy water and healthy climate. So, due to the lack of education about the role of ecology at the very minute scale to the very gigantic scale, we are spending more money and energy to destroy our ecology rather to regenerate it, which would be one step ahead of just being sustainable. And that should have been the bare minimum that we were practicing. I mean, sustain is right in the word. So it's not all doom and gloom. We have full control of our future, and with the right attitude and wisdom, we can change what we want to see in the world. But we got to take those steps. And here, permaculture is a very good basis to start off with, since it has these ground ethics and principles distilled from thousands of techniques that we humans have been using since time. So the ethics of permaculture are care of the earth, care of people, and a fair share, which is basically not hoarding surpluses, but actually sharing it with the people and animals and other beings on the planet. And some of the guiding principles would be everything is connected to everything else, every function is supported by many elements, and every element should serve many functions. Easy, simple to understand, and that's how nature works. So, coming to the nature, and we're talking about a system, we should be able to define a system. A system which was defined by Ludwig in 1960 in the general systems theory is just an entity which maintains its existence through mutual interactions of its parts. Now, we can define what composes a system and identify its boundaries, which is up to us. So we can think of anything as a system, and then we can apply permaculture principles or however you want to call these regenerative design principles. And for example, also in other studies, these things are coming up. Like in Resilient by Design, Professor Joseph Fixell from Ohio State University identified 4 characteristic systems that can improve upon to strengthen the resilience to change. The 4 are diversity, efficiency, adaptability, and cohesion. Permaculture is a collection of tools and techniques from all over the world, ancient and modern, which can be summarized as regenerative measures that go further than just being sustainable. So we have to study the whole system, like we just spoke about, make it resilient. How do we make it resilient? And how do we think of the whole system rather than just what we are growing or what we are eating? We can take care of the whole system while we are actually tilling or working on the earth. I mean, tilling should be avoided, as I said before. As you can see here, it has some of this and design principles in its core. In this picture, you can see, which I will expand further in a bit. But here are some of the permaculture topic that we discuss and have in mind while thinking of a whole system. These kind of permaculture principles, once you've learned them, can be applied to, for example, buildings. Using the systems design principle of permaculture, we can better design even our living and working environments. They might translate to a green roof, for example, as you can see here, or houses made of earth material, even carbon neutral negative houses, climate positive, passive houses, solar orientation, triple glazing, insulation, zero energy design, solar panels, wind turbines, geothermal heating. All of these things can be used in the design of a house. This is how a whole system is designed, even around a house. So, what would it translate to in a house? For example, this is an earthship which I have worked on in Rishikesh. We have built one earthship in Rishikesh as an ashram. That was the first ashram in the world which is built as an earthship. So, we employ thermal solar dynamics for temperature stabilization. So, there you can see it's built into the earth using the earth's temperature, plus the solar orientation works perfectly to absorb heat in the winter and give off heat in the summer. Incorporate renewable energy sources, produce food, integrated water harvesting systems, and treat its own sewage in house. We've been able to achieve that quite inexpensively. Then comes the next application of permaculture, which is what we're going to focus on a little bit more, as it has wide scale, huge applications. Since, as we spoke about, regenerative agriculture can take a lot of the carbon that we released in the atmosphere back into the earth. So, agriculture and ecology is a very good application of permaculture, which we should talk about more and more. So, forests and trees are essential to regenerative agriculture. Tree cover stabilizes the soil, prevents land erosion and desertification, enhances the land capacity to store more water, reduces drought and floods, helps repair climate cycles, moderates air and soil temperatures, and supports biological activity, including wildlife habitat. Most importantly, draws down carbon and enhances the soil organic matter. Some of the key regenerative practices are, for example, no-till farming and pasture cropping, organic annual cropping, compost and making compost tea, ecological aquaculture, using perennial crops, using polyculture, using biochar, holistically managed grazing. So animals are helping and they're not separate from a farming system, an agriculture system. So animal integration, really important. So the hundreds of benefits that we can get can be categorized in these headings. A handful of healthy soil like that, as you can see here, can contain more microbes than the entire amount of humans that have ever existed on the planet up till now. Can you believe that? And moreover, soil can hold 4,000 gigatons of carbon dioxide, while the atmosphere can hold up to only 600 gigatons, and the plants can hold 1,700 gigatons. So the soil is the clear winner. Taking care of the soil will take care of us. Now we come to the permaculture principles sections, as I thought sharing of these would be really important, as applying these to any field can really work wonders towards making it most effective, sustainable, and regenerative. Since they're quite straightforward, I would go through them quickly without too much explanation on them. The first principle is observe and interact. A good, free, and harmonious relationship between nature and people is not something that is generated in isolation, but through continuous and reciprocal interaction with the subject. Catch and store energy. Principle number 2. Instead of spending Earth's renewable resources to an unsustainable degree, by using captured and stored energy effectively to maintain the system and capture more energy in the end. Principle 3. Obtain a yield. Design any system for self-reliance at all levels, including ourselves. Flexibility and creativity in finding new ways to obtain a yield will be critical in the transition from growth to descent. Principle 4. Apply self-regulation and accept feedback. Limit inappropriate growth or behavior. With better understanding of how positive and negative feedbacks work in nature, we can design systems that are more self-regulating and thus reducing the repeated and harsh corrective management. Use and value of renewable resources and services. Renewable resources should be seen as a source of income, while non-renewable resources can be thought of as capital assets. Produce no waste. This radical perspective sees waste as resources and opportunities. Example, the earthworm, like all living things, is a part of a web where the outputs of one are the inputs for another. Principle 7, design from patterns to details. So take the macro view, not only the micro view into the picture. The commonality of patterns observable in nature and society allows us to not only make sense of what we see, but also to use the pattern from one context and scale to design in another. Pattern recognition is an outcome of the application of principle 1, observing and interacting. Then comes integrate rather than segregate. In ecosystems, we find the connections between things are as important as the things themselves. Synergy is the key word here. Thus, the purpose of a functional and self-regulating design is to place elements in such a way that each serves the needs and accepts the products of other elements. Here's more examples of integrating into the environment, and you can get as creative as you would like. Use small and slow solutions. Systems should be designed to perform functions at the smallest scale that is practical and energy efficient for that function. Use and value diversity. Look for evolved systematic complexity. The diversity needs to be seen as a result of the balance and tension in nature between variety and possibility on one hand and productivity and power on the other. Use edges and value the marginal. The value and contribution of edges and the marginal and invisible aspects of any system should not only be recognized and conserved, but the expansion of these aspects can increase system productivity and stability. So increasing our resilience to even climate change. Creatively use and respond to change. Designing to make the use of change in a deliberate and cooperative way and creatively responding or adopting to large-scale system change, which is beyond our control or influence. And as you can see, these pictures have just given you an idea of some applications of it. And since there is just such a short time right now, I cannot go deeply into applications since it could take from a minimum 3-day course to a full-on 1-year expansive course. This is why I'm sticking to just the essence of permaculture to be able to help you understand how to think when you think further. But I will be happy to share applications of it also at a later point somewhere. So coming to the next point would be characteristics of permaculture. Everything works both ways. See the duality in things, positive and negative. Everything works in many ways. Diversity of functions, yields, and relationship. See solutions and not problems. Look for opportunities, readjust relationships. To cooperate and not to compete in natural and human system relationships is very important. To make things pay, that means everything contributes to something else. To work where it counts, minimum input for maximum benefit. To use everything to its highest capacity. To bring food production back to the cities, to help make people self-reliant, individuals and communities together, to minimize maintenance and energy input while maintaining yield. And that would be my time. Actually, I've gone 3 minutes over from my requested time. But I would like to end with a positive note. And as we can see here on the picture, we can see left side is where it looks like we are heading with wars and famine and floods and fires. But on the right side is a very simple, holistic based living where we incorporate ourselves with the ecology and not push ecology around for meeting our greed and need. We can do both and still thrive. We can reverse global warming in 30 years if we start using just the regenerative agriculture principles on a large scale. It's about moving from climate neutral and sustainable to actually climate positive and regenerative. Thank you all for your attention. I wish you a great day ahead. I'm sure this has been an exciting celebration of the World Environmental Day. I hope to be with you the next time we have this talk. Thank you for all your time. Godspeed ahead. Vande Mataram.